Hey everyone, it's Dr. K. So here's a quick reminder of our control zones. So if you take the human body, you can basically break it up into the different control zones. And so the first control zone that we'll see is right here around the pelvis. Second control zone is right there around your core, what's traditionally known as your core. And then you have your control zone around your shoulders. So when we're managing force, we have to think about the strategies we're using to perform tasks in the real world. So force management strategies vary depending on what muscle actions and which of the control zones we use to interact with the real world. So the first strategy we have is zone stacking. And this is where it basically connects all the control zones and they stack them in a relatively consistent pattern. And so this is kind of what we think about when we're thinking of neutral spine. You know, your coaches may coach you on, setting straight, getting tight. Basically what we're doing is we're getting the spine into a neutral position point, and from there, really just efficient muscle coordination and muscle activity increases or decreases to meet the demands of, lifting, pushing, pulling, interacting with the real world. It allows you to have movement variability, but it also allows you to have, movement options. So the trunk position itself doesn't really change very much when you're zone stacking, and it creates a central pillar of support for your arms and your legs, while they produce force from either your pelvis or, your arms and your scapula. So basically the central control pillar, the central control zone, that's basically helps transmit force through the body. The second strategy we usually see is a neuromuscular response. And that's basically your body's ability to cope with the unexpected that happens in life. So again, it allows you to be able to respond instantly to any external challenge and basically minimizes the potential risk for injury to the region of your body that's under stress or duress. So it allows you to kind of regain control and balance in your environment. So, I want you to think about when you catch yourself after you're running and you come across a small pothole or a mud slick that you just kind of didn't see. If you're in my house, it's basically me reacting to catching my crazy little girl when she decides it's time to jump on the couch. So it's really a stabilizing response that's instant, it's adaptable, it's fluid, but basically it allows you to cope with the unpredictable real world and the obstacles that it throws at you. The third strategy we see is the pseudo armor strategy. Now this is really a compressive strategy that involves stiffening all the large trunk muscles in the body. So it's usually very protective, and basically it locks all three control zones using high muscle force. So it's compressive, it's directed centrally to the body, and basically it eliminates any independent motion or action between the three different control zones. Everything's compressing here towards the center. So, this is typically a defensive strategy that it's, very useful when we're playing high impact sports, something like that. Maybe grappling, wrestling, or playing with our kids even in the right context. But really, this requires a high amount of energy, and basically it's not very fluid, it's not very dynamic, and its role is to restrict and constrain motion. We also see that strategy with injury or trauma, right? If you had a car accident or work injury, you usually see that strategy. Body's super interesting because it has a feed forward mechanism to prepare for movement. So it basically means that any of the muscles necessary to support activity, they turn on like a fraction of a second before the movement actually happens. So the muscles that support good overhead position, they turn on a fraction before my arm starts to move. It's preparatory. And time again, we see that, with the central control zone and the transverse abdominis, and, we can talk about that later, but that's specifically where it's really noticed to happen. So, our old injuries or dysfunctional tissues or joint stiffness, they all cause inappropriate muscles to act in the preparatory way for getting ready to move. So it basically means that it starts to make muscles move or not move in unnecessary ways to activate before the movement occurs. So Movement force transmission involves timing and coordination, and if there's a problem with the issue with soft tissues or joints, that means the right body parts won't be in the right place at the right time, and so they're not going to move the right way. And so sometimes that comes across as a timing or sequencing problem that basically presents as weakness or maybe poor muscle activation. If those things are happening, or your coaches are cueing you that those things are an issue with you, you're having the same problems over and over again, then you got to start thinking that it increases your risk for either poor performance or long-term risk for injury. So strengthening that muscle doesn't necessarily guarantee it's going to improve its function, because the movement has to occur. Everything has to move in the right place at the right order. So to generate power and minimize stress on the body, these are basically the ways that we kind of manage the force transmission through the body through the 3 control zones. But basically it allows you to be able to move independently from each other, all 3 control zones, when they need to. In order for you to reduce the risk of wear and tear on your spine and incurring an injury, you really need to start thinking about these strategies. What strategies do you use in the real world? What strategies do you know you're lacking? And I really want you to kind of start thinking about your movement habits, especially when it comes to like your old injuries or stress patterns or muscles that are consistently tight, even though you're stretching them over and over again. Your coaches are telling you stretch this, and it's still tight. That tells you that there's something dysfunctional there, that maybe you need to start thinking above or below the problem about how to address it. I know it's a lot to process, but I think it's really important for you guys to have better context, better understanding and insight to your own movement habits, your own movement strategies. That way you're really empowered to take care of your health on your own. If you have any questions, reach out to me, let me know how I can help. I really love solving difficult movement-based problems. They're just really interesting, really fun to work with. So stay strong, inspire others.